this. I'm going to check my cell phone real quick because I'm using a new service, as you can see, called Restream. Oops, there we go. There we go. That's the joy of doing live streams. Man, so much that I want to talk about today. But let me see. Just trying to see if. Oh yeah, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. This Restream is working. I'm learning this stuff. So this morning, what I wanted to share is more about family, right? More about family and the different types of families that we grow up in. As I've been sharing my journey with people and what I've been through, it just keeps coming up more and more that, one, I'm not alone, which makes you not alone. Two, this is very normal. Three, people don't want to talk about these things at all. People don't want to share the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is that your family probably loves you, and they probably care a lot about you, and you probably love them, and you probably care a lot about them. But that doesn't mean that you have to go out and protect them. And that's what I'm realizing. It's not my responsibility to not share my story. It's my responsibility to do what feels right for me right here, right? Right here, what feels good right here in this center chest, what we call the heart center. And what feels good right here is letting this stuff out so that I can let it go instead of holding it in and having resentment, holding it in and getting sick, holding it in and getting tired, holding it in and being upset, holding it in and not growing, holding it in and shining my light less than what I should be because I'm trying to protect those other people. So I guess my question that I asked, I posed a question, is it your responsibility to protect those who maybe didn't purposely hurt you, but they have been hurting you for life? Or is it your responsibility to protect yourself and do what's right for you? Now, depending on who you ask, right? Depending on who you ask, you're going to get different answers. Let me first talk about the forms of abuse, so that way you can see if you've had abuse. Because if you've had abuse, that's fine. That's fine. We're all going to be somewhat abusive or an abuser or abused at one point in our life by somebody. So maybe recognizing the different types of abuse is the first step. So there's obviously physical abuse, right? That's the easy one. You get physically abused by somebody you love, right? Or somebody, anybody, it doesn't matter. But there's physical abuse. Then there's emotional abuse, right? And emotional abuse can come in many different ways. Our flavor of emotional abuse is ignoring, right? Our flavor of emotional abuse was ignoring or being ignored. And let me tell you, that's a hard one to suck up, right? That's a hard one to suck up. It sounds super easy, like, oh, like somebody ignores you. But when the person that you're trying to be validated from ignores you, that's really tough. And that leaves emotional and psychological scars. Another form of abuse is if you have somebody in your life that's addicted to drugs or alcohol, right? That's a different type of abuse that you're going to go through because they live in what we call their own bubble. And that bubble is typically not a true representation of the world. And even when they quit using and abusing the substances, what one of my counselors told me is that you go into what we call like a dry drunk stage of your life. And a dry drunk stage is where you're not using, but you're still acting out like you were. And so being a dry drunk doesn't, that's a tough one because you're not using, but yet you still perform the duties like you're intoxicated because your world is still shifted. And there's a lot of different things you can do to help those people with detoxing and rebuilding with supplements and different types of hyperbaric chamber oxygen things. So there's a lot of different things you can do to help rebuild the brain up so that they can work through that. I guess the abuse that I know the best was just feeling neglected, and not feeling worthy, not being able to do the things that I wanted to do, because I was always told that they're wrong. I was always told that there's a better way to do it. I was never really encouraged by our parents to continue doing my path. It was always, somebody was always taking credit for our work. I remember when I sold Cutco knives, and I'm not bashing my dad by any means, right? We all have a parent or someone in our lives that has not been 100% supportive, that we've kept around maybe a little bit too long, or we gave them a little bit too much power. I remember when I sold Cutco knives, my dad said, "Oh, you wouldn't have done well if it wasn't for my friends, right? If it wasn't for your mom buying all this stuff, you wouldn't have done well." And, I've sold a few knives in my day, a few $100,000, I don't know how many, $250,000, $300,000 worth of knives. And then, I've been a manager. And so, I had a lot of success with the company. But when somebody tries to take that success away from you, right, it goes into those feelings of worthiness and adequacy. It also doesn't allow you to develop fully, in the sense that you trust your decision-making processes, right? So you don't trust your decision-making processes. And then you also start to second guess, am I really skilled? Did I really do well? Was I just lucky? And that affects you long-term. And so whatever type of abuse you've gone through in your life, right? Whatever type of abuse that you've gone through in your life, you have to work through it. And at some point, it's okay for you to say, I'm not going to allow those people in my life anymore, right? I might show up to an event, but I'm not going to show up to the event. I might do this, but I'm not going to do that. Or I might not want to talk to certain people in my life. And that's okay, right? You're not obligated to talk to somebody. See, they say blood is thicker than water. Well, what I learned from one of my coaches is that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water. What is it? Oh gosh, I can't remember the phrase now. But essentially, it says that the group is more important than just the people that you came into the world with, and that means you got to build up your friends that support you. That means you got to build up a mastermind that supports you. That means you got to build up a coaching program that supports you. That means you got to build the habits that support you. And then you got to recognize the triggers and the people that trigger you. The triggers and the people that trigger you are so important. And have you ever, if you're a little bit older in life, have you ever gone back to Thanksgiving dinner and you go to your parents' house? And when you go to your parent, like, you could be the most professional person in the world, right? Everything's locked and loaded. But the minute you walk through that door, it just brings up this childhood memory. And when you get into that moment, it's like muscle memory comes back at full speed. And you go from being like the most professional person in the world to being this little kid again. Or vice versa. You walk into your office on Monday morning and all the drama from the weekend is gone. And you're like, bam, I'm ready to crush it. We go back into phases of our lives if we don't address them. If we don't see what caused that trigger, we can fall back into that hypnotic rhythm of where we once were. And if you don't learn how to figure that out, if you don't get help, if you don't get therapy, if you don't get, hypnotherapy, whatever your flavor of therapy is, if you don't get that, you're always going to be triggered by those events, right? You're always going to be triggered by the house. You're always going to be triggered by your brother or your sister or your uncle or your dad. And this last week, I've been a triggered monkey. Like, I haven't got any work done. I've been stressed. I'm carrying extra weight. I'm stress eating again. And my stress eating is probably different than most people's stress eating. Like, I still eat exceptionally healthy stress eating normally. I haven't been riding my bike as much, right? So yesterday I just wanted to cry. Like, I was sitting down and I just wanted to cry. And I did. I had a friend on Facebook, not FaceTime. I didn't say anything for the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And she just talked, and I just had tears in my eyes, and they finally came out. And I was like, I got to move. And I jumped on my bike. I have a stationary stand. My bike was probably my best investment. And I have a stationary stand, and I rode for half an hour, maybe 20 minutes. And I just had to get my body moving, right? For me, exercise makes me feel worthy. For me, self-improvement makes me feel like I'm worthy, because I know that nobody can take that away from me. Nobody can say, oh, I made you go to the gym, right? My dad can say, oh, I gave you a bike, but he can't make me ride the bike. I had to ride the bike myself. I have to get on the bike myself. So for me, one of the things that I love doing is I love to exercise. Right now I'm boxing, and I'm realizing that, yesterday I had a splitting headache, which doesn't help when you're in an emotional state. But I had a splitting headache, right? It's like cracking headache. Why? Well, I got punched in the jaw. I got punched in the face. I was fighting this little gangster boxer yesterday, and the coach said, hey, make sure that he learns to protect himself. Like, we got to beat this fear out of him. Like, when did I get so much fear in life? What happened to that 17-year-old that was charging up the stairs, going into my manager's office? I remember it like I was 17. We were going to Pasadena. It was our first regional event. We're all in suits. I had sold, $8,000, $9,000 worth of knives over 2 weeks. I was super excited. All I wanted to, I knew I was going to win awards. I knew that I put the effort in. I knew I put the calls in. I knew that I did the work. And I remember charging up the stairs, leading my team, or just the team that I was on. And I said something that the division manager heard, and he goes, I like that kid. He was older than we were. He's probably 10 years older than us. So he goes, I like that kid. And I remember the suit I was wearing, right? That was a moment where I knew that it was all me. Sure, my parents had some help in it, right? I called their friends, but I had to make the calls, right? And then for somebody to say down the road, oh, well, without our friends, you wouldn't have been successful. It's you don't need to take away somebody else's good feelings, right? Somebody else works hard. Be careful with your words, right? If you guys have children, if you have team members, if you have people you care about, be careful with your words you use to them, because those words can cause a tremendous amount of pain. And sometimes you might say something jokingly, oh, I was just kidding around. But if somebody's already hurt and they're not showing it, and you joke around with them, it can put them into years of hurt, or it could put them into, they never come out of it, right? And parents, when you, even your team members, when you try to control every move that somebody makes and you don't let them make mistakes, one, they don't learn, but two, they lose confidence in themselves. They lose the ability to do little things, right? Have you ever seen the kids that live with their parents at their 50s and 60s and 70s? And the kids are like completely dependent on the parent, and the parent's like exhausted. And but the parents don't know they don't know. We gave our kids everything. Right? We gave our kids we tried to give them everything. We did everything for them. That's the problem. You got to let people fall. I was listening to Sadhguru the other day, and Sadhguru says that he was getting interviewed by Lewis House or Tom or somebody. He was getting interviewed by one of these guys that I follow, one of the influencers that I love. And he goes, you raise your daughter differently than most people raise their kids. And he just laughs. Sadhguru laughs. He goes, yes, I do. He says, you raise your daughter and you let her do things. You let her make her decisions. And he goes, yes, of course I do. He says, my job isn't to influence her, because the whole world is going to influence her. My job is to show her different ways of doing things and then let her make her own decisions. Right? She's got her own mind, right? I was talking yesterday about when I was married, my two, I guess they were cousins, but they were so young they could have been considered more like nephews. So I was, 28, 29, and there was two twins. And well, obviously there was a pair of twins. So there's not two twins. There's a pair of twins. And there was the good one, and then there was the little mischievous one. And if you tried to discipline the good one like you disciplined the mischievous one, it was a disaster, because he would just become so sensitive. So sensitive. Like, he would just become incredibly sensitive. But if you disciplined the gangster one, is what I used to call him, little thug, and he is a cute, smart boy, but just strong, right? He was doing pull-ups on the banisters at the age of like 1. I mean, just a strong young boy. And if you try to give him that soft love like you gave the other kid, he would just railroad over you. You know, he would hit, he would punch. He wasn't angry. He was just a lot of energy. So you had to parent them differently. You had to treat them differently. And that's what Sadhguru says. He says, you have to treat everybody the way that they receive, right? You got to treat people how they respond. And so sometimes you're going to have to do a little bit more tough love. Sometimes you have to do a little bit more soft love. Everybody's different. And what I have to realize in life, and it's tough, is that I'm not here to protect my parents. I'm here to protect and shine my light. They made their choices, which is what got me to where I'm at, which is what got them to where they're at. And if they're not happy with it, they have to figure it out on their own, not me figure it out for them. And that's a tough one. That's not easy. I'm not going to lie. That's not easy. Because being this person that always wants to fix everything, I want to go and try to fix the family, fix the relationship. I want to keep things together. I want to keep the world together. But that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to protect myself and protect those around me. And if they choose to show up in a way that doesn't serve me, then I have to make the choice. Do I want to keep being there and being what I call the punching bag? Or do I want to step into my own brightness and my own light and protect myself? And that's the question that I ask you. Do you, and I know these topics, a lot of people watch these videos, but they don't want to post on them. They don't want to comment on them because they don't want other people to know that they're going through these issues. So I understand I get it. I went to lunch with a buddy of mine. He's like, hey, I watched your video. And, he shared a lot of things about his family and how he grew up and his cousins and things of that nature. And there's somebody out there in this world that has it worse than I do. I get that, right? I get that. I didn't have some of the issues that some people have. I had different issues. You guys don't have mine. Our parents are different, so we're going to have different experiences within those issues. You're not responsible, though, to protect those that have hurt you. That's all I'm going to say. And at some point, you need to step into your own, and you need to get therapy, right? I think kids should all be given a therapist as like first grade. Right? I think every kid should have a therapist. I think every parent should have a therapist, and I think they should all be separate, or the sessions should be separate. Because if you get a husband and wife in couple counseling, it's he says, she says, right? And it's the same thing I feel like if you get a parent with their kid, especially if the parent's still a victim, right? Because we always look at our parents and we always think of them as these perfect human beings and that they make no mistakes, but our parents have their own issues. And if parents would teach their kids what their issues were, kids would have a better understanding of what mom and dad are going through. And then we might stop that pattern that mom went through with dad. I'm going to have my own issues with my children. I don't know what they're going to be, but I'm going to have some sort of an issue with my kids. It's inevitable, right? Like, I'm not perfect. I got my own shit. You're not perfect. You got your own stuff. What's that going to look like, though, if I don't share openly with my children, hey, kids, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. They're like, oh, wow, Dad, you're not perfect. No, I'm not. I try to become better every day. But think about the immense amount of information in this world that we don't have any clue about. There's no way that anybody's perfect. I don't care who you look at. And so when we try to make people idols, we get disappointed. And if you share with your children what you're going through, your struggles, your trials, your tribulations, hey, these are the decisions that I made in life that put me here. These are the good ones. These are the ones that, if I could go back in time, I might change them a little bit because then this would have been different. But they made me who I was, son. They made me who I was, daughter. Right? If I didn't do this, then this wouldn't have happened. But if I would have done this, then maybe this would have happened. I wouldn't have had to have that struggle. And you share that with your kids, maybe not when they're 2 years old, but when it's appropriate. And so I guess I don't have the answer to my question. I guess I pose the question to you is, do you feel like you can live your life? Right? I know so many ethnic kids, right? So many ethnic kids that live with their parents that don't live. They have to get permission they're 30, 40 years old. They have to get permission. Oh, I got to ask my mom if I can go here. Oh, I got to make sure that, what? No, get up and get the fudge out. You don't need to ask anybody's permission. You're an adult. Get out of your parents' control. Get out of your parents' reach. And if that means that you got to jump stale and live in the apartment that you don't want to live in for 6 months, then go do it. Right? So many people are scared to go and take a risk because they never took a risk growing up. This is going to be a huge problem for society. It already is a huge problem for society. People want handouts. They don't want to do the work. People want a vaccine. They don't want to go get healthy. Right? They don't want to get on their bike while watching TV. They don't want to do squats while watching TV. They want to eat popcorn and drink beer. And then they wonder how they woke up at 50 years old and their body doesn't work anymore. And they look like they're 70 or 80 years old. And they wobble and they hobble. They say, I can't do this. I can't do that. Look, if you do the easy things today, tomorrow is going to be hard. Straight up. If you do what's easy today, tomorrow is going to be hard, right? If you only work your minimum job, tomorrow is going to be hard because you're not going to have enough money for rent. You're going to have more month than money. But if you do what's hard, you go take a class, you go to a program, you go to a coaching seminar, you get a coach, you hire somebody to help you, you pay money to self-develop yourself, whether it's school or it's a trade program or it's a new skill, or you tell your boss, hey, I want to make more money. What can I do? What do I need to learn? And then you go home and you read up on it and you watch YouTube University, right? People say, oh, you got into cycling really quick. How'd you do it? I said, I guess watched YouTube every night for half an hour to an hour. And I saw what those guys were doing and I listened to what they were doing. And I went to the sporting store every day, right? You can go ask the guys where I was at. I was in there every day. They're like, they make fun of me because they're like, you should live here. Because I went there every day to learn. And then I was able to do longer rides, faster rides, stronger rides. Now I'm starting boxing. You better believe I'm going to be on YouTube University. One of my buddies said, hey, watch Mike Tyson's coach. I said, well, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? I was going to watch the boxers. No, learn from the coaches what they taught the boxers. Don't look at the boxers, look at the coaches. And then practice what they tell you. Oh, okay. If you need help, right, you need to watch people that have gone through what you're going through. And then you need to see how they perform. And then you need to look at how they got coached, right? Look at who their mentors were. Look at the books that they read. Listen to the podcasts that they listened to. Follow the same people. Learn from them and condense it in time so that you don't have to go through what they went through. So no matter what, no matter how you slice it, your responsibility in life is to make sure that you and your safety is number one, and that's protected. That's sacred, right? That's your one sacred cow you have. I say I have no sacred cows. I lied. I have one. It's my own mental and physical health. It's my safety. If I feel like I'm going to be put into a situation by people that are going to force me to want to take a sip of alcohol or smoke some pot, I won't go. And if I do go, I'll be mentally prepared. Let me tell you, that big glass mirror right behind you, I'll move my whiteboard out of the way, or I'll write on there different scenarios that could happen. And I'll role play by looking at myself in the mirror and saying, hey, if somebody says this, what do you say? If somebody says that, what do you say? What do you do? How do you walk away? How do you say no? Because I know that the slippery slope for me of one beverage, right? Oh, you want a cocktail? I love a cocktail. Let me tell you, I'd love a cocktail. But if I have one, it's that slippery slope to 2 to 3 to 10 to 15. And it might not happen that night. That night, it might just be one. And that's the scary part. That's the scary part when you're dealing with people who are abusive. See, what happens with people that are abusive, it's the same thing that happens with people who are alcoholics or they have a drug problem. You can control it for a while, and then once you can't, and it's too late to go back because you've created that habit and pattern. And so for me, I could go maybe 6 months and be a social drinker, but there's going to come a point, and I've had it happen before because I've done this many times, there's going to come a point in my life where it's just one drink too many. And I'm going to say something to somebody I care a lot about. I'm going to hurt somebody I care a lot about. I'm going to pick up the phone and call somebody I care about and say something to them. And it's not that it's bad to say something bad to people. It's just, do you want to say it in a moment of clarity, or do you want to say it in a moment where you're completely fudged? For me, it's clarity. I want to do things in a moment of clarity. I don't want to do things because I got hammered and things just came out because I lost control. And so when you lose control, you lose the ability to have a real conversation, and you lose the clarity. And so for me, the slippery slope is when you start letting the people back into your life that haven't done the work and they haven't changed their patterns. You can have a good conversation at dinner. Oh, wow, that was a nice conversation. Well, yeah, you don't talk about anything deep. And then you have another conversation, and then you have another conversation. And eventually that person's going to get comfortable around you again, and they're going to have an outburst, and they're going to say things to you that hurt. And then the next day they're going to be like, everything's hunky-dory, and you're going to be back into that black hole. So it's very dangerous with people that are abusive to you, because if they don't do the work on themselves to change their habits and the way that they are, then eventually they're going to say or do something back to you that hurts you. And it's the same way it is for me and alcohol. Eventually the alcohol is going to come back into my life and it's going to hurt me. And so just remember, there's one sacred cow that you should have in your life, and it's yourself. Maybe two, your family, right? And I'm not talking about the family that you were born into. I'm talking about the family that you created, whether that be your friends, your masterminds, your coaches, your mentors, your personal family, your wife, your children, your husband. The sacred cows you should have are the people that you choose in your life and yourself. So, I'm going to share more of these messages because this is my form of therapy. Some people aren't going to like it. Some people are going to say you're not honoring your family. Some people are going to say you're being exceptionally selfish. Some people are going to say you're being a little crybaby, whiny baby. I don't really care what you say. Post your comments, send the DMs, call me privately, say, you should take that down. What are your parents going to do? Your poor mom. Your poor mom. That's what I've heard a lot this week. Your poor mom. I said, yeah, poor mom. But what about the person pouring their heart out in pain? What about that? Does that person not have feelings? Does that person not is that person not allowed to be in pain? Or is it only the other people? Because everybody has a responsibility in everybody else's lives. Eventually, it's my responsibility to make myself not have these issues, which is why I seeked out counseling. It's why I asked for help for counseling, right? I want to go to a counselor, not that I find, but somebody that's worked through these issues with addiction, with abuse, right? I want to find somebody who can compress my time. Maybe they just hypnotize me and I can just forget about this shit and I can just go on with my hunky-dory life. But clearly, the 3 years that I've spent working on this have not allowed me to let go. And doing it on my own has not worked fully because I still carry this intense rage in my body, this incredible anger inside of me. Like I thought I had let it go. And then when things start to spark up, like, oh man, I get feisty. I get angry. I get depressed. I get all these different emotions. So seek the help you need. And I promise you, you'll come out better and faster. Hope you have an amazing day.